Good morning. We had a big deadline on Friday, and those were your facility checklists. So I wanted to go over those with you. I'm almost done grading them. If yours aren't graded yet, I'm very close. So I just wanted to send this message out so that when you looked at your checklists, you kind of had some feedback from me, and I can explain where I'm coming from and some things that I saw when I was grading. So I just wanted to debrief with you here in a message this morning so that you can look at your checklist as soon as possible and consider that feedback and make some edits. So I put a lot of comments on your actual paper. So you'll see yellow highlights and word bubbles. Those are my comments, and I have a lot of comments on individual standards. So, if I see something that I thought needed to be changed, I would flag it with that highlighting, that yellow highlighting, and a little word bubble that has my comments on it. So look at those, and then use those to edit. So you have an opportunity to edit these before the next round of due dates. You're doing your audits this week and next week, but before you do, you can and should look at my feedback to use it as an opportunity to edit. So if you try to use standards that are either unusable or unmeasurable in your audit, then you're unable to complete your audit. Then your grade on the next part is going to hurt. Because if you can't, if I said that some of your standards were unmeasurable, then you're not going to be able to measure them in your audit, and then your audit grade is going to hurt as well. So this is an opportunity to edit those standards. Go back in, look at my comments, and see if you can come up with some different standards that might suit you better. Okay. So for example, some unmeasurable standards that I saw, and that was probably one of the more common problems that I saw was when standards were unmeasurable. And so a few specific examples, and you might see your own, some of your own standards in here, but I wanted to use them as examples so that you could hear it from me and kind of know what I was talking about in your comments. So some unmeasurable standards that I saw, sometimes you would embed one standard into another standard. For example, trash disposal shall be in accordance with the safety standard for material disposal. Or toilets should contain one stall complying with 4.19. Well, these are both important facility standards. I like the thought, but you referred to another standard that's undefined. So what is the safety standard for material disposal? How are you going to measure if it's in compliance with that? What is standard 4.19? How do you know that the toilet stall is in compliance with that? So you can't answer a standard with another standard without specifying what that measurement is. So, I took off if I saw that. I flagged it if I saw that. Also, another mistake I saw was that like a vague standard. For example, the light provided should be adequate for the facility. Well, that's true, and that's a good statement, but what does adequate mean? There's no measurement for that. There's no yardstick with which to decide what's adequate or not. You don't get to decide what adequate measurement is. You're not a professional light assessor. You don't know what adequate means. So we need things like, like some kind of brightness level or foot candle that you can measure. And then if you choose to use foot candles, that's fine, but you're going to have to figure out some way to measure it. Is there a way to measure the brightness of that light? How does the facility director do it? That's an example of a way that you might use the facility director to help you. Is if you need to figure out how many foot candles something is. So, okay, if the standard was vague, so saying that something is adequate doesn't tell me anything, because I don't know what adequate means. It's nor do you. How many inches, how bright, how tall, how wide. So those things need to be measurable. I also saw a few standards that weren't really facility standards. They were more like participant rules. For example, no smoking is allowed in the facility. Well, that's good, but that's not really a facility issue. That's a participant issue. It doesn't really have to do with the design or operation of the facility. It's just a kind of a participant rule. So that was off target. Finally, a couple of you used the facilities rules as standards. For example, you might have said that children under 18 need to be accompanied by an adult to use the DSC. And that rule is based on a standard, and I bet you could find it in the ACSM health fitness facility standards. So that's the standard that you use. Use the ACSMs, and then you would use the DSC's rule that children under 18 aren't allowed without a parent as evidence that they're following that standard. So it's kind of like those two things were flipped. So a facility rule isn't a standard, but it might be evidence that the facility is following a bigger standard. So find that standard, find the source of that standard, not really the facility rule. So so those were a few kind of common mistakes that I saw, and I wanted to explain those to you verbally, so that I hope that helps. And I certainly made those comments on your paper too. I also saw some standards that are really important, but might require you to get creative or get some help with measuring. I just mentioned the light brightness. If you're measuring foot candles, you need to figure out who can help you figure out if foot candles are present and can be measured in your facility. So another example of that is in somebody's paper, they said that severe weather shelter areas should be identified along with the number of individuals that each area can safely accommodate. And that's great. But to measure that, you might have to ask the facility director where they keep track of that information. They've probably got a list somewhere, like in their emergency procedures manual, but they've got a list of safe areas and how many people those safe areas can accommodate. So you might have to ask for help in finding that. You might have to ask the facility director to show you that, and then you would use that as your evidence. So I really like that standard, and but you're going to have to get a little creative in providing your evidence for that. So just another comment on how you might have to, another example, a way that you might have to measure that standard. Not all standards can be measured with the tape measure. You may have to measure with other evidence. For example, if it might be in a staff training manual or an emergency procedures manual, you might have to find evidence for that. So again, I put a lot of comments on your actual paper. Use those to eliminate standards that don't work and find new ones that you can have a measurement strategy for. Your next draft that you're going to turn in will hurt. As I mentioned before, your next draft will hurt if you base your actual facility inspection on the standards that I flagged as not measurable or not actual standards. So this is your opportunity to go back in, edit those, and change those. So speaking of facility visits, this week and next week are the time frame in which you're going to conduct your visits. If you work in your facility and you've got the run of your facility and you've got keys to some of the different areas you need to look at, and you work in there regularly and you have permission to be there and you have access to everything, then you may not need to contact the facility director during your visit. But if you don't already work there, or you don't, if you don't already work there, then you will need to contact the person in charge of your facility and ask permission to do your visit at a certain date and time. And part of that is simple courtesy to let them know why somebody is poking around their facility and measuring things and taking pictures of things. Part of that is so they can help you with any standards that you need help measuring. For example, if you wrote that the fitness center needs to be kept between 62 and 66 degrees, you may need help finding the thermostat, or you may need the facility director to show you their temperature gun, which is probably how they measure air temperature. So if your standard is unmeasurable, then don't expect the facility director to help you. That's your problem. I'm flagging your unmeasurable standards that need to get fixed. So if your standard is measurable, then the facility director can probably help you. If it's not measurable, then sorry, then they can't help you, and that's going to be counted against in your final report. So don't forget that you have to have evidence for saying whether a standard was met or unmet, and that can come in the form of pictures, or it can come in the form of an explanation for what you found. If you found something in an operations manual, or you counted rows of bleachers, then and you can explain that to me, and you take a picture of it, then that's the evidence I'm asking for. And also remember that I'm here to help you. I'm happy to go through sources with you and help you identify standards that might be a little more appropriate than some of the ones that I flagged in your checklists. I'm happy to do that. That's my job. So please let me know. Sometimes it just helps to look through something with you or talk through it with you. I find that helpful. Hopefully you might too. So again, just wanted to talk through a lot of the comments that I made in your facility checklist. So thank you for those. Like I said, if I haven't graded yours yet, it's coming soon, because I know that this is a quick turnaround in these next couple weeks. So good luck with your facility inspections, and I look forward to seeing how those go. And thanks again for your work, and I appreciate it. And hopefully the feedback is helpful, and we can do well going forward. So thank you. Have a good day.